Some breaking news for you now. U.S. officials telling Fox News that North Korea has loaded 2 anti-ship cruise missiles onto a patrol boat for the first time since 2014. This as the rogue regime is vowing to strike the U.S. with, quote, thousand-fold revenge after the UN Security Council imposed new sanctions on Pyongyang for its nuclear program. Here to discuss, Deroy Murdock, a Fox News contributor and a contributing editor for the National Review, Fleitz, Senior Vice President at the Center for Security Policy and a former CIA analyst, and Harry Kazianis, Director of the Center for the National Interest Defense Studies. Fred, I start with you. This latest news, what do you make of it?
Well, I mean, it's very troubling whenever there is an escalation like this. I think this probably represents typical bluster we see from North Korea after events like this. The key thing here is, will China enforce these new sanctions? It hasn't done so in the past. I think that's going to be the key to preventing the outbreak of a very serious military confrontation.
Well, Deroy, that brings up a good question. We had these sanctions from the UN. The president said he really liked them, but I'm wondering, is it enough? Is it going to get the job done?
Well, I think it was a major diplomatic victory for the U.S. to get a unanimous vote out of the UN Security Council to apply these sanctions to North Korea, so kudos to them on that. I think it's absolutely vital that we do what we can to have the Chinese basically yank the chain on their pit bull in North Korea, and for that reason, I think that is the #1 priorities, number 1 through number 10 for the Sino-American relationship, and as long as they are cooperating and helping us keep North Korea in a box, I don't think we need to be discussing the number of high-definition TVs they make, all these trade questions, etc. We really
need to set aside for this?
Have them focus 100% on North Korea. The trade stuff can wait. We don't want to have Seattle go up in smoke and glow in the dark. That's really what we need to focus on. So put the trade stuff on the side and have China work on keeping North Korea under control.
Harry, do you agree with that? I mean, Nikki Haley said this was the single largest economic sanctions package ever, and yet we still don't really know if that's going to be enough.
Well, sure.
Go ahead.
I mean, the challenge here is very simple. I agree with Frank's point. If the Chinese don't enforce these sanctions, keep in mind, 90% of North Korea's exports go through China. And in the 10 or so years that we've had sanctions on North Korea, even more than that, the Chinese have never complied with UN Security Council resolutions and enforced the sanctions on North Korea. So I think this is a great move on the Trump administration's part. But the challenge is, will the Chinese actually enforce the sanctions? No way. They're not going to do it.
Well, Harry, you've got a piece on Fox News Opinion right now, right?
Right.
Running, and you're saying what? What do you want to see happen?
Look, I think the Trump administration did the hardest possible thing when it comes to foreign policy, and that's make North Korea the #1 foreign policy priority. But if the Chinese don't enforce the sanctions, all of this is for nothing. So I think the Trump administration needs to do is have Donald Trump go on his 21st century bully pulpit, his Twitter feed, and say to the Chinese, look, if you have 30 days, you have 30 days to enforce those sanctions. Right. If not, you have to pay the price.
I want to read some of these tweets because he is tweeting right now. Trump tweets on North Korea sanctions. Here's what he said. The fake news media will not talk about the importance of the United Nations Security Council's 15-0 vote in favor of sanctions on North Korea. Fred, this was a significant win. I mean, come on.
Well, look, it was a significant win. It's the toughest sanctions ever, but most sanctions against North Korea are 15-0. And there were tough sanctions approved a number of times in the past. A very tough resolution was passed last November that put caps on Chinese purchases of iron ore and coal from North Korea. Well, what happened? China didn't abide by them, and there was a 37% increase in North Korean economic activity with China in the first quarter of this year.
And now we've got a ban on coal. That's what we're looking at now. That's the new news thing. Deroy, what's it going to take? Before we came to air here, you said, hey, Jerry, this is the new Cold War. I hope it stays cold, my friend.
I hope it stays cold and doesn't heat up. What really would be helpful is if Kim Jong-un went to sleep one evening, and didn't wake up the next morning. And I'll just leave it at that.
Well, the big debate over whether the U.S. is looking at regime change.
Exactly.
That's going on. All right, guys, thanks so much for your help today. Really appreciate it.